Hi everybody, very welcome to Mentor and yet another video podcast. As always, I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. Today on the podcast, guys, we're going to be talking about why aircraft store their fuel in the wings. All right, why is that? I'm going to give you 3 good reasons for that, and I'm also going to give you a little bit of system knowledge regarding the fuel system in the 737. So stay tuned. This video is brought to you in cooperation with Brilliant.org. Now, Brilliant.org is a website that is supposed to give you the knowledge needed and the appreciation that you really should have for mathematics and physics, and doing so in a quite fun way. So check out the link below. Right, guys, so most of you at this point probably know that big aircraft and smaller aircraft, actually to a large extent, store their fuel inside of the wings. Now, why is that? Well, it turns out there are some quite good reasons for that. I'm going to give you 3 reasons right now. So the first reason is, as you might have already guessed a little bit, weight and balance. When constructing an aircraft, weight and balance is extremely important. How we seat passengers throughout the cabin, for example, is really important, where cargo is situated, and also where the fuel, which is going to weigh many, many tons, is being situated. And that is because the wings are giving all of the lift needed in order for the aircraft to fly. Okay, that's why we need to make sure that the center of gravity of the aircraft is situated more or less over the center of the wings. Okay, that gives the aircraft stability, and that makes it more aerodynamic as well, because it doesn't need to use so much elevator input. And the way to do this, if you think about it, if you would have tanks that will be situated far towards the nose of the aircraft or far towards the tail, that would mean that as the fuel is being used, is being depleted by the aircraft, the center of gravity will move. Okay, and this is not something that you normally want. I know that there were and are fighter aircraft like the SR-71, for example, that was using fuel in order to trim it. But large airliners do not use this in normal cases. Okay, so weight and balance is the first reason why we want to use the tanks in the wings. Okay. Now the second reason is storage room. An aircraft is built to be able to lift as much payload as possible. Now, payload is passengers like you, cargo, and your baggage. And that is being put into this metal tube that forms the aircraft body. This means there's precious little room for other things like fuel. And we need quite a lot of room for the fuel. So it turns out that wings are perfectly suited for this. The wings are almost completely hollow. They are formed by a couple of wing balks in the center of the wing that takes up much of the load. And then you have horizontal spars that forms little walls inside of the wing. They make up the shape of the wing, and it makes sure that the wing is structurally sound. Okay. Now, the way I want you to picture a fuel tank inside of an aircraft is not like inside of a car, because inside of a car is like a rubber box that you fill up with fuel. But in the case of an aircraft, it is actually the structure in itself that's being used. It's being made sure that it's completely watertight, so it's being sealed off, and then fuel is being pumped up into the space itself, and that means that they can utilize a big part of the wing as a tank. Okay? And the fact that you have these spars going at regular intervals inside of the wings, that actually have a very good secondary effect, which is it keeps the fuel from slushing, from moving quickly if the aircraft is, for example, turning, or if you're subject to turbulence, because these spars have holes in them. They're perforated by holes that will allow the fuel to move inside of the tanks, but it will slow the fuel movement down quite a bit. So this means that you will not have large and quick movements of fuel inside of a wing. So it turns out that the wings are actually perfectly suited for being tanks. Okay. So that's reason number 2, storage room. Reason number 3, this is something that you probably haven't thought about that much, but it's very, very important, and that is the structural integrity of the aircraft. So if you think about it, the reason that an aircraft can fly is because the wings are taking up a lot of lift. Okay, they will take out the most amount of lift during takeoff, because that's when the aircraft is heaviest. That's when you have all the fuel on board in order for, to complete the flight, and all of you passengers, cargo, and everything is on board. So that's the maximum weight of the aircraft. Now, all of that weight that I just mentioned, the payload, passengers, cargo, all of that is situated at the center of the wings. Okay, so that's weighing down at the center of the wings, and the lift is being taken off by the entire wing surface. So if you have all of the weight at the center and you have all of the part of the wing producing lift, what you will get is this, right? The wings will be flexing, and they will be flexing a lot. The wings are perfectly constructed to flex, but only to a certain amount. And if you have an extremely heavy aircraft, for example, the wings are going to be flexing a lot. So when the engineers saw this, they thought, what can we do in order to, distribute the weight a little bit more equally over the wings? And the answer to that, obviously, is why don't we put fuel inside of the wings? If we do that, the fuel tanks will act as counterweights. It means that instead of having all of the weight here at the center, it will be more evenly distributed over the wings. So when we're taking off and when we're flying along, the wings will still flex, but not as much. And this is a really important reason for having the tanks inside of the wings. Now, this is also the reason, if we're coming into talking about the systems and the 737 system, that we always use the fuel inside of the center tank first. So the fuel system of the 737, we can lift about 3,915 kilos in each wing. So that means about 7.8 tons in the wings. Okay. If we need more fuel than that, which we typically need if we're flying more than about 2.5 to 3 hours or so, then we can upload fuel into the center tank as well. The center tank is situated just behind the main wheel well bay, and that's also because we want to keep that as close to the center of gravity as possible. But if we have fuel in the center tank, that has to be used before we use the fuel inside of the wings, for that reason that I just gave you. We do that by having AC controlled fuel pumps, and the AC controlled fuel pumps inside of the center tank has a higher output pressure than the ones in the wings. That is so that when the engines are running, the center tank fuel pumps is pushing the fuel out first. So the engines will be eating fuel from the center tank first, and only when the center tank is completely depleted will they start to use fuel from the wing tanks. And that is to make sure that the weight distribution stays even, like we discussed before. Other things about the fuel system, we have the fueling station on the right side of the aircraft, and that fueling station pressure fuels to all 3 tanks. And like I said, for the same reason, we always fill up the wings first and then we fill the center tank. If the fuel pumps would fail, we have 2 fuel pumps in each tank. If they would fail, the engines are perfectly capable of suction feeding without the help of the fuel pumps. But if we're up at high altitude, there is a possibility of fuel releasing air that can create airlocks inside of the pressure of the suction feed. So we could suffer some momentarily loss of thrust if we're at high altitude and the fuel pumps would fail. But like I said, it's 2 pumps for each tank. So this is a highly redundant and very well thought out system. Apart from that, I don't know really what to say. Yeah, there is another kind of curious function that you might not know about, and that's a nitrogen generating system. So Boeing found out, and all the manufacturers actually found out, that since they're using pumps inside of the tanks, those pumps are using the fuel itself for cooling and lubrication. And this means that if the tanks goes down, as the fuel is depleted, the pumps might start running dry, and if they do so, they will go hot very quickly, and you don't really want something that's hot inside of a fuel tank with fuel vapors in it. So there are 2 different systems that's stopping danger from appearing here. And the first system is that as soon as a pump is felt to deliver low output pressure, it sends a warning to the cockpit tells us that it's low fuel pressure from that pump and we can turn it off. And also, after a few seconds, even if we don't turn it off, it turns it off itself before it gets hot. The second system is the nitrogen generating system. That actually enriches the air inside of the tanks with nitrogen and makes the air almost impossible to ignite. So there's, as always, a redundant system that makes sure that the aircraft is safe. That's all I had about the fuel system. I hope this makes more sense now. I hope you understand why we keep the fuel in the wings of the aircraft. And if you have more system questions, send them in to me, either here in the comments, but I would like it even more if you go into the Mentor Aviation app and you send it in to me through the submit feedback function, or just tag Mentor and it will send me directly a question. Okay, the app is completely free to use, so make sure that you have it. There's no reason not to have it. Now, another thing that I wanted to talk to you about, guys, is slightly more important. So, you know how I've always been telling you guys that you need to focus on your math skills and your physics skills in order to prepare yourself for flight training. And the reason for that is because the ATPL theory contains a lot of this. Okay, there's a lot of mathematics inside of there, and you really need to understand physics in order to understand things like meteorology, for example. Now, when I was young, I was really struggling with mathematics, I have to admit. And the only way that I could come through that in order to apply for the flight school that I eventually went to is by working my butt off. Okay, I would have loved to have a system or a tool like Brilliant.org to help me. This is why I have let Brilliant.org be a sponsor of this channel, because what they do is they give you an easy to understand and a good learning tool in order to really understand, not only understand the formulas and stuff of mathematics, but really what's behind it, how it works. And that way, by actually understanding it, you will increase your overall knowledge of it, and you will just get better and better. So a course that I would really recommend you to check out is Physics of Every Day. Inside there is some mathematic formulas and mathematic problems regarding, for example, meteorology, which you will definitely need eventually. If you guys are interested in this, it's completely free to check out Brilliant.org. But if you use the link here below and you want to use the full capacity of the website, then the 256 first of you who uses this link will get 20% off the annual subscription fee. So I highly recommend you to check it out if you feel like you want to improve your math skills before you start applying to flight schools. Have an absolutely fantastic day wherever you are, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.